Hello everyone, we're on the Star Wars The Old Republic public test server, and we are checking out the Sith warrior, specifically the Marauder. What's interesting is the Jedi Knight has already been tested on the public test server. However, this is the first time a mirror class has been made available, and it's assumed that all the feedback that went into the Jedi Knight Sentinel has also gone into the Marauder. So the Marauder isn't starting fresh, and there shouldn't be too much feedback to give. However, if you didn't pay attention when the Jedi Knight was up for testing and still wanted to give feedback, or if you're only familiar with the Marauder, now is a great time to download the public test server, or if you just want to give this video and give feedback in the SWTOR.com forums, you can do that too. However, please make sure to note you didn't actually test it yourself and instead you saw the info online somewhere. So we're going to be checking out Annihilation, Carnage, and Fury, and I apologize, Sith Marauder is not a class I play a lot at all, period. So I'm mostly going to be reading it out for you guys without too much analysis. So here we go. So we're going to start with Annihilation, and I'm going to go the most in-depth with that. So let's start with, at level 10, you get Berserk and Force Rend. And this is going to be very similar to what you get through Annihilation normally in the game. These new trees only show certain things. They only show things where you have a choice, or things that are directly related to your discipline. Any of your abilities that are just part of the Sith Marauder class set, those will be over here, and they won't show up on the tree at all, so don't freak out if they're missing. So at level 15, you'll actually pick up an ability that affects Force Rend in one way or another, and you get to choose which one you want. So at level 15, the first choice is Juyo Rend. Force Rend immediately maxes out your Juyo stacks and deals 3% more damage for each stack you have. Second option is Draining Center. Activating Force Rend immediately builds 10 Fury, and Force Rend deals 4 times its damage whenever it consumes a stack of Berserk. And your last choice is Critical Bleeds. While Force Rend is on a target, the crit chance of all your bleed attacks on the target is increased by 10%. At level 20, you'll get another choice. So the first option is a passive. It's Snaring Slash. Vicious Slash and Ravage slow targets they hit by 50% for 10 seconds, so an added slow. The second choice is Overwhelming Slashes. Ravage immobilizes the target for 3 seconds and generates 1 focus. And lastly, this is an ability, not a passive, it's Predation. Requires and converts 30 stacks of Fury to issue Predation to you and your Operation Group members within 40 meters, increasing movement speed by 50% and melee and ranged events by 10%. Lasts 10 seconds, so obviously not going to be useful to a solo player at all, but could be very important for those who play Operations. At level 25, you'll get Rupture, much like you would before, as Annihilation Marauder. But at level 30, you'll get the ability to choose a passive. Oh, not always a passive. So you'll get the ability to choose between these 3 things. So the first is Flaming Wave. Dealing damage with Cauterize sends a wave out from your primary target, causing your burns to tick on nearby targets. Second option is Force Lash. Lashes out at a target with the power of the Force, dealing damage. Deals additional damage for each of your periodic bleed effects on the target. Replaces Rupture. Oh, so weird. Okay, so that's an option. And the third option is a... Wasn't this one showing up before? So there's some type of bug on the test server right now. I wonder if I control UU if it'll reset itself. There's some type of bug on the public test server that's making some of the passives not show their text. And it's been very frustrating for testing. So unfortunately, I can't tell you what that third passive is, but it should be related to Rupture. Next up, at level 35, you'll have Furious Power to choose from, along with 2 other abilities. So Furious Power is an ability, consumes all ability charges of Furious Power, and applies Furious Power stacks to you. Each stack increases your next direct single target melee attack by 25% and is consumed whenever you deal damage with these attacks. Recharges 1 ability charges every 30 seconds. So a damage boost. The second option at 35 is Bleeding Center. Critically hitting with periodic bleed damage builds 2 Fury, even during Berserk. This effect cannot occur more than once every 2 seconds. And the last level 35 option is Burning Zen. All melee damage attacks deal additional burn damage while Zen is active. This effect cannot occur more than once per second. So just a straight up damage boost, but how you want to apply that damage is going to be your choice at level 35. At level 40, you'll pick up Annihilate. Same as you did before with Annihilation, big shocker. At level 50, however, you get another choice. So the first is Inexorable. You generate 4 rage when stunned, immobilized, put to sleep, or knocked around. Additionally, the cooldown of Unleash is reduced by 30 seconds. Wait, isn't Zen for Sentinel? As I mentioned before, these were probably copy-pasted over from the Jedi Sentinel. So you may see some strange terms in here. Or maybe you're just a super light side Annihilation, I don't know. Next up for level 50, your second choice is Interloper. Force Charge gets an additional charge and builds 2 Fury when activating. And your last option is Defensive Roll. Reduces damage taken from area effects by 30% and increases internal and elemental damage reduction by 3%. So a very defensive option. At level 55, you'll get Deadly Saber, much like you did before. And at level 60, you've got a choice. You'll be able to choose between these 3 things. The first choice is Cloak of Annihilation. Each use of Assault, Battering Assault, and Crippling Slash reduces the active cooldown of Cloak of Pain by 3 seconds. The second option is Path Carver. Sweeping Slash deals 15% more damage, so great for running around doing area attack. And lastly, Blood Ward. Activating Saber Ward grants immunity to stun, sleep, lift, and incapacitating effects for 6 seconds, and getting attacked while Saber Ward is active heals you for 3% of your maximum health. This healing effect cannot occur more than once every second. So that's your level 60 choice. The level 70 choice has been the hard one for every single class, and the Jedi Sentinel, or rather the Jedi Knights in general, had the hardest of choices, and this has carried over to the Sith Warrior. So here we go. Hold on to your riches. The first option at level 70 is Force Camouflage. So Force Camouflage is a very defensive focused ability. You obscure yourself with the Force, becoming difficult to detect, reducing your threat towards all enemies, reducing all damage taken by 50%, granting immunity to controlling effects, and increasing movement speed by 30%. Lasts 4 seconds. Dealing direct damage ends the effect prematurely. So Force Camouflage does a ton of stuff, but it's a defensive ability at its heart. And then next up, your second choice, and you only get one of these 3, is Mad Dash. And this is a movement-focused ability. It's technically a defensive too. You don't take, your defense chance goes up by 100% while you're moving, but it's primarily, it moves you around the board fast. And then the last choice is Undying Rage, and this reduces the damage you take by 99% for 4 seconds. So those are your 3 options. This is a choice that players were immediately kind of outraged for the Jedi Sentinel. For Sith Marauder, I assume people already knew it was kind of coming, but I can't imagine we're any happier about it. So the final choice at level 80 is 3 more options. So first is Thirst of Rage. Bloodthirst generates 12 rage when activated, and you heal for 1% of your maximum health whenever you activate an ability that consumes rage. Second is Interceptor. Force Charge, Force Rend, Devastating Blast, and Obliterate snare the target, reducing its movement speed by 50% for 6 seconds. And lastly, Brazen increases your damage reduction by 2%, and you build 2 Fury when attacked. This Fury building effect cannot occur more than once every 1.5 seconds. So the choices for Carnage Fury are very similar at the top of the tree. Pretty much exactly the same. So let's hop into Carnage. So Carnage, at level 10, you'll pick up Gore, and you'll pick up Berserk, much like you would before. But at level 15, you'll get the ability to choose something that affects gore in some way. So your 3 options are going to be piercing gore. Gore deals additional damage to enemies in a straight line behind the primary target. Second, derving. Oh. Really? It's going to be like a kind of like throwing a lightsaber, I guess? Or stabbing through somebody? That's kind of crazy. Okay. Second is derving gore. Gore deals 10% additional damage per movement, enhancing effect active on you and increases your movement speed by 10% for 10 seconds. That's interesting. Okay. And lastly, berserk gore. Whenever gore consumes a charge of berserk, its cooldown is reset. So next up at level 20, you'll get another option between 3 different choices. So the first choice is snaring slash. Vicious slash and ravage slow targets they hit by 50% for 10 seconds. Second option is overwhelming slashes. Ravage immobilizes the target for 3 seconds and generates 1 focus. And lastly, predation. And this is only for operations. It's not really going to be for solo players. Requires and converts 30 stacks of fury to issue predation to your ops group, which makes them go fast and their defense go up by 10%. At level 25, you'll pick up Massacre, much like you would before. At level 30, you'll pick something that will affect Massacre, and here's your 3 choices. Your first is Defensive Stance. Each time you deal damage with Massacre, your damage reduction increases by 2%, stacks up to 3 times, and lasts for 6 seconds. The second option will be Rush Down. Blade Rush deals more damage the faster you are moving. And there is a little note in there if you go and test on the test server that it's not actually active in-game yet. And lastly, at level 30, your final choice is Frenzied Blade. Massacre's critical chance is increased by 20%. Activating Massacre reduces the cooldown of Frenzy by 2 seconds. At 35, you get another choice. The first is Furious Power. So Furious Power is an actual ability you click. So it consumes all ability charges of Furious Power and applies Furious Power stacks on you. Each stack increases your next direct single target melee attack by 25% and is consumed whenever you deal damage with these attacks. Recharges 1 ability charge every 30 seconds. So your next one is Swiftness. Critically hitting increases your movement speed by 5% and your crit chance by 5%, lasts for 6 seconds and stacks up to 5 times. And lastly, Quickness. Critically hitting with force-based energy attacks reduces the cooldown of rage spending offensive abilities by 1 second. This effect can only occur once every second. At 40, you'll pick up Ferocity, much like before. At 50, you get another choice, and these choices are going to be exactly the same as what we covered earlier, so I'm not going to go too much in depth. If you need more info, go back to Annihilation. So at 50, you can choose between generating rage when you're stunned with Inexorable. Interloper. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that word wrong, I'm sorry. Interloper, Force Charge, gets an additional charge and builds 2 fury when activating. Or a defensive option. Defensive roll. At 55, you'll pick up Devastating Blast like normal. At 60, you'll make that choice where you reduce the cooldown of Cloak of Pain by using your other abilities. That's Cloak of Annihilation. Second is Pathcarver. Sweeping Slash does 15% more damage. Or lastly, Blood Ward, where activating Saber Ward gives you some immunity as well as doing some healing to yourself. At 70, you get to make that really hard choice of your movement ability, Mad Dash, your Force Camouflage ability, your defensive little stealth, and lastly, Undying Rage, your super shield, your 99% shield for 4 seconds. At level 80, you'll make that same choice, Thirst for Rage, where Bloodthirst generates 12 rage when activated and you heal a little bit. Interceptor, Force Charge, Force Rend, Devastating Blast, and Obliterate snare the target, which means they'll be glued to the ground. They can't move around, reducing its movement speed by 50% for 6 seconds. Oh, I guess snare is just a slow. My bad. And then Brazen is the last option. It increases your damage reduction by 2%, and you build 2 Fury when attacked. This Fury building effect cannot occur more than once every 1.5 seconds. And lastly, we'll move on to Fury. So Fury is going to be very similar, except that at level 10, you'll pick up Raging Burst, much like you would before. And at level 15, you'll be able to pick between 3 abilities that affect Raging Burst. The first option is Subjugate. Raging Burst unleashes a burst of energy around the primary target, dealing damage to nearby enemies. The second, making it a multi-target attack, cool. So second is Dark Synergy. Dealing damage with Raging Burst or Smash increases your critical hit chance by 20% for some amount of time. The tooltip isn't finished yet. And lastly, Unrelenting Rage. Raging Burst deals 15% more damage and applies trauma to targets. Trauma reduces the healing received by 20% for a certain amount of time. The tooltip is not completed. At 20, you'll get to make a choice, much like the other disciplines. So the first is Snaring Slash. Vicious Slash and Ravage slow targets they hit by 50% for 10 seconds. Second is Overwhelming Slashes. Ravage immobilizes the target for 3 seconds and generates 1 focus. And lastly, Predation, which is that operations-focused ability, not for solo. At level 25, you'll pick up Obliterate, that awesome extra leap ability, just like you would before. And at level 30, you'll get a new choice of abilities that will affect Obliterate in some way. So the first option is Seething Defense. Activating Obliterate puts a mini ward on yourself, which absorbs 94 damage, lasts up to 10 seconds. So the second option is Furious Discovery. Activating Obliterate immediately builds 10 Fury. And lastly, Obliteration. Killing an enemy within 3 seconds of dealing damage with Obliterate resets the cooldown of Obliterate and increases its damage by 50%. At level 35, you'll get another option. So the first is Furious Power, much like the other disciplines. Consumes all ability charges of Furious Power, and it basically gives you an extra bonus to damage. It increases your next direct single target melee attack by 25% and is consumed whenever you deal damage with those attacks. Second option is Criticality. Your critical hit chance is increased by 25% during Berserk. And last option is Furious Rumination. Each time you deal damage with a force-based kinetic or energy attack, you generate 1 rage. At level 40, you'll pick up Force Crush, much like you would before. At level 50, you'll get Inexorable. You generate 4 rage when stunned, immobilized, put to sleep, or knocked around. Additionally, the cooldown of Unleash is reduced by 30 seconds. Second option is Interloper. Force Charge gets an additional charge and builds 2 Fury when activating. And final option is Defensive Roll, a defensive option. At 55, you'll get Furious Strike, much like you would before. At level 60, you've got that same endgame choice there. Cloak of Annihilation. Each use of Assault, Battering Assault, and Crippling Slash reduces the active cooldown of Cloak of Pain by 3 seconds. Path Carver. Sweeping Slash deals 15% more damage. And Blood Ward, which gives you immunity to stun, sleep, lift, and incapacitating effects from Saber Ward, as well as some extra healing. Level 70 is that super hard choice. Force Camouflage. Obscures yourself with the Force. Gives you more defensive stuff. Immunity to effects. Movement speed boost. You've got Mad Dash for your movement. And you've got Undying Rage for your super shield. And at level 80, you have that same choice. Thirst for Rage. Bloodthirst generates 12 rage when activated, and you heal for 1% of your maximum health. And then, Interceptor. Force Charge, Force Rend, Devastating Blast, and Obliterate snare the target, reducing its movement speed by 50% for 6 seconds. And lastly, Brazen. Increases your damage reduction by 2%, and you build 2 Fury when attacked. This Fury building effect cannot occur more than once every 1.5 seconds. So there's your in-depth look for your Marauder and everything they have posted on the public test server. As I mentioned before, it's a little bit less looking for feedback than before because they've already tested the Jedi Sentinel and got a ton of feedback that way. But if you wanted to give your feedback, you absolutely still can. And there is a few things that are kind of like, seems kind of broken or missing that we can definitely give feedback about. I hope that helped you out. If you want to support these really in-depth videos, visit Swtorista.com/support. Or if you want more Star Wars The Old Republic videos to show up on your YouTube homepage, subscribe to this channel. Good luck and go give your feedback. See you guys later.